this week, creativity and politics. This has been a possible topic in my mind for a really long time, but I didn't know how to take it on. And it's only, towards the end of this entire journey that I've figured out the best way to approach it. So I want to start with a bit of a preamble that gives context to what I'm going to say about creativity and politics. Madman521, hey, thank you for that. That's very cool. This is a conversation that I'm having about creativity. So it's kind of, there's not going to be any comedy here, I'm afraid. But if you want to stick around, please feel free to do so. Alistair, hi, welcome back. All right. So I wanted to make a distinction, before I talk about this place where creativity and politics, the intersection of those two things. So the context that I want to give to this is the different types of thinking that there is, or different tiers of thinking. Now, so I've grabbed this from quite a few different philosophers. So don't take this as one thing, what I'm about to say. If it's something that's interesting to you, then do your own research to find out. Because I literally have grabbed from Ken Wilber and Gerbser. Carly, you can help me out with the pronunciation of that one, I think. So and mishmashed them up, but just to give you an idea. Okay, so all will become clear as I sort of explain what I'm talking about. Steve, hi, and Gawley 89, hello. All right. So there's this notion that there's different types of thinking that we go through, and I think actually what happens is we don't just go through these different types of thinking as we mature as a human being. So the type of, anyone who's been around children knows that the way that they think is not the same way that a teenager thinks, and the way that a teenager thinks is not the same way as an adult thinks, and it's not the same way that an older person thinks. So those ways of thinking have been sort of stratified. Anyways, they've been broken up into different tiers, basically. And so I'm just going to talk about that just a little bit before we actually go into the politics thing. Queer Black Therapist, hello, welcome. Okay, so the first one, and this comes from Gerbser, is archaic thinking. So this is, hang on. Yeah. Oh, I'm just going to go through them first, actually. I've got to get this right because it's not anyway. So archaic thinking. And then the next tier is magical thinking, then mythical thinking, then a kind of socio-religious mental thinking or thought process. Then there's one that I couldn't find a name for it, but I remember it from a Ken Wilber thing. So I'm just going to call it kind of everyone's all right, or love, or something like that. I haven't really got a proper name for it. Then there's one, there's a sort of a top tier as far as we know. It's spelled, Carly, it's spelled Gerbser. Gerbser. It's German, so I'm not sure what the pronunciation is. Siobhan, yo, welcome back. And Rob, hi. So, and then this top layer I'm calling phenomenal thinking. Okay, so I'm going to explain what I'm talking about as well. So like I say, you can go through all these different tiers of thinking as a human being, but also man has been through all these different types of these different types of thinking throughout man's sort of evolution. And then also even within a day, you can go through these different types of thinking. And I wonder if it's something to, anyway, I don't want to start speculating here, because the point is there's different types of thinking, right? So I'm just going to break them down very quickly as to what they are. Hey, Amber, how's it going? So archaic thinking is where, archaic thinking probably belongs to the early Homo sapiens, or maybe even what preceded Homo sapiens, because it's what the thinking is more of a we mentality. It's not really got a sense of being an individual, moving as a group, as a herd, as it were. But this is people, not animals. And so that's archaic thinking, basically. It's kind of predates ego. And then magical thinking, which I think is that's when things start to get interesting, because that's when the ego starts to emerge. And magical thinking is basically the thought process that means that you think that your actions can affect the external world. So you think that if you make a wish that you know your wish can come true, or you know that type of thing. So it's kind of, and it's the realm of make believe. So in terms of children, it's like it's present in that sort of 2 to kind of 5-year-old, where there's a lot of make believe and play and stuff like that. So that's magical thinking. But it isn't to say that only children think in that way. That's when it's most healthy. But some adults indulge in magical thinking in a way that isn't healthy. And in fact, even Ken Wilber, as I was reading up on this, Ken Wilber says that even though magical thinking does have its place, sometimes it can be dangerous. Like he says, like for example, in the New Age realm, he says like that can cause problems if adults are starting to think, if I do this thing, it can affect the outside world. He's thinking more in terms of witchcraft and things like that. That if I like you, obviously great, but if I don't, I'm gonna stick a needle in a doll and somehow that's going to make your hair fall out, or whatever it is. So anyways, no judgments, I'm just saying that's what it is. Final Call Productions. Oh gosh, I can't remember your name. I remember that you have a Chinese grandfather. Anyways, hi. And Alan, hey, how's it going? So Carly says, I know who you mean, but I can't share how to pronounce him right. And yeah, it's a tricky one. Anyways, I mean, if people are interested, DM me and I'll write it down. But this is more just to give a context of the conversation, so it's fine. Gwyneth, yo. Hi. Okay, so out of this magical thinking, a sort of ego arises because you're thinking I can affect out there. So I is created, and the experience of I is something separate from that world outside of me, right? So the mythical thinking is where legends start to show up. One thing I was reading was saying that that's where pledges and commitments come, because you've basically been told a story and you make pledges and commitments based on that story rather than your own sort of investigation or whatever. I don't know about that bit. And then it said something about drinking the Kool-Aid, but I think that might be a bit unfair. So I'm just going to say that, out of mythical thinking comes legends and obviously myths and superstitions to explain the world. And so from this mythical thinking, that is where stories come from. So this would have been, the sort of, Middle Ages or whatever. That would have had this sort of mythical thinking, this myths and legends and all that sort of stuff. Man used it to piece together a meaning for what is going on around him. And then there's this there's a few other tiers of thinking that Ken Wilber comes up with, that mythical, rational, mental, and integral. But I don't know, that starts to feel a little bit esoteric. So I'm just going to jump to the next big one that I think is important, and social, religious, or rational. And this is where the thinking is that you use logic to tie everything together. If it doesn't make sense, then it has to make sense logically. And this is, I think, where most people currently are, in terms of human development. This is where we currently are. And this thinking was the birth of Western science, and probably, a lot of Western medicine as well. So, so this rational thinking is, out of this thinking also comes this good and bad, this right and wrong, these sort of moral decisions, or moral viewpoint, shall we say, about how the world is, right? So bear with me, I'm going somewhere with all of this. And then there's those other layers that I talked about above that. So there is a layer, I think, and I don't have a word for it, and I didn't quite see it specified in what I was looking at, but I think it's a layer of, let's call it love for now, but there's probably a better word, and once once we've talked about it a little bit, you'll be able to figure out what that is. And then there's a layer above that, I think, that's like, that I've referred to as phenomenal thinking, which is where you just see everything as a phenomenon. I don't think there's many people there yet. Like, it's almost like a stepping away from the ego. Maybe people who are like, can genuinely get into that headspace of we are all one. Maybe they see and you see the movement of everything in the world as just a phenomenon, phenomena happening around you. Right? So Vicky and Carl, hey, welcome. So this is a little bit esoteric, but there is a point to this. Okay, so each of these tiers, like I say, we go through it as we evolve, as we've evolved as a species. We go through it as we develop as a human being. We maybe also, go in and out of these different types of thinking as we go through our day. You can move between these different tiers. You can choose to move between these different tiers. You can choose to see things in a different way. And we all, at some point, indulge in mythical thinking, magical thinking. I don't know how close people get to archaic thinking, but like we move between all that. Sometimes we're super logical and rational and thinking in terms of right and wrong and stuff like that. But the reason that I say all of this is to just give a little bit of a landscape in terms of like being a creative in relation to politics, because the way that a lot of people relate to politics is from the right and wrong realm, this rational, logical, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, or whatever, that sort of mentality. And the reason that I gave that context is just to say that you don't have to relate to politics in that way. You can see it, you can come from a place of love with it, right? You can come at it from a place of seeing it just as a phenomenon, just the movement, the natural sort of progression of humaning. This all of what we're seeing is a natural, not logical, but a natural expected outcome. Do you know what I mean? Like relating to it like that. So that's why I say all of that to say that. And I think sometimes a lot of the misunderstandings that can happen around, anyways, like not just in politics, but a lot of the misunderstandings that can happen come from people being on different tiers and not speaking to each other on the same level, kind of thing, and not realizing that there's a level. There are different levels, and that there is another way to communicate with somebody. So for example, because it's a bit sort of like hypothetical or something at the moment, or abstract, like say if you were driving along and you knocked somebody's wing mirror off, you know that phenomenal thinking isn't gonna cut it. When you try and communicate with that person about what's happened, they want you to be in that logical tier with them. You did something bad, I'm in the right for being angry, you have to make it right by paying for it or explain. Do you know what I mean? Like you can't knock someone's wing mirror off and go, but dude, we're all one. Your wing mirror is my wing mirror. Like that's not gonna work in that context. However, if you were having a philosophical discussion about something, perhaps that mindset would be of use or would even be appropriate. So when we're thinking about politics, you want to be mindful of like, where are you speaking from? What tier are you on? What tier are you looking at? Now, for the most part, the probably because politics exists in that tier of sort of logical, social, religion, morals, blah blah blah. It exists in that tier, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's how you have to encounter it. That's how you have to deal with it. That's how you have to speak to people about it. But you have to make sure that they're either on the same page as you or capable of getting where you're coming from. Because again, same as with politics, if you come at it from a mythical or a magical thinking perspective, thinking that that's going to somehow be a good way to communicate with someone that's trying to explain why Brexit is a terrible idea or something. If you're like, yeah, but if I wish Brexit away, then it's going to go away. That's not, you're not going to be able to communicate with somebody like that, right? So Kevin and Tommy, hey, yes, and Andy, hey, what's that? All right, so okay, so that all said, put that aside. So in terms of creativity and how it relates to politics, I think there's two main areas. One is being a creative and having an opinion or expressing oneself about politics, because there's a weird thing where, especially people who are in the public eye, is that when artists or creative types express themselves about politics, and it happens to sports people too, actually, they get shut down in a way that people in other professions don't, as though somehow their thoughts or whatever aren't valid. But I would say that it doesn't matter whether you're, it doesn't matter what, obviously it doesn't matter what field you're in, but it doesn't matter what other people think. If you want to express yourselves into yourself in terms of your politics, then you got to do it. But it's just to be aware of where you're coming from with it, because if you're coming at it from a place of like right and wrong and self-righteousness and complaint as well, you're going to get unstuck, because those places, there's not a lot of energy there, and there's not a lot that can be moved when you're coming from that place of blame or complaint or right and wrong. Because let's say Brexit, for example, like no one really knows whether it's right or wrong. There's lots of experts, but we've all had enough of experts. You know, there's a lot of experts that will say one thing or another. And the only way that we'll really know what, because everyone's still got their own agenda, so it's very hard to tell what the actual truth of the matter is. So the only way to really tell is for it to happen or to not happen or whatever. So, you know, anyone who's very, very vocal, you know, one way or the other, they're tracking some sort of righteousness, because they don't know, because none of us know. That's just using Brexit as an example. This is not about Brexit at all. So the most important thing is to just know where you're coming from with what you're saying, and I would say that the strongest place to come from is from a place of let's make things better. Let's do what's right. Let's do what serves people, rather than, because the interesting thing about politics and lots of views really is that people become so identified with their views that when those views are challenged, it feels like a physical assault, really. Because have you never, like, let me ask you this: have you ever been in a discussion with somebody where they are so like disproportionately angry with you if you challenged a thought that they have had, or a belief that they've had, or something that they've said? That's because they've become so, their identity is so entwined in their belief or their, you know, whatever, that they actually can't distinguish the two. They can't distinguish their belief or their thought from who they are. And so when you say, I don't believe you, or I think you're wrong, or whatever, it's like, it is almost like an attack on their very being. Have you ever been in an argument with somebody who's disagreeing with you, and it makes you so mad that you want to hit them? Well, then that means that you've done the same thing. So like, this is not, it's very easy to say it's people over there, them out there, them types that don't understand, but we all do. We've all got issues or subject matters where our foot is nailed down and we are not able to discuss logically. And, you know, that's why that old saying, never discuss politics and religion, it's not a joke. It's a real thing. As soon as you get onto those sorts of subjects, especially if the person's thinking is dominated by spends a lot of, if that person spends a lot of time in that sort of social, religious, right and wrong, moral, logical, mental thinking space, then, you know, those sorts of things are going to be the triggers, because that's their domain. So yeah, that's that. So where you're coming from, basically, that's all to say that where you're coming from is the most important thing, and to be aware of what you're speaking into. You know, a lot of the times people don't have the listening for what you're saying, and you try and say it, but people try and say it anyways, even though it's like, who are you saying this for now then? If there's no listening for what you're saying, who are you saying it for? Most oftentimes it will probably be for yourself. But as a creative, I absolutely fundamentally believe that what we have to say in relation to politics is absolutely relevant. And you mustn't be put off by what anybody else says, anybody's attempt to shut down any of that. That what we need to say or want to say about politics is as valid as anybody else. You never get doctors going, "Oh, just go back to doctoring." People never say that to doctors. Just stick to your doctoring, all right? But for some reason, it's appropriate. People think it's appropriate to say to artists and sportsmen and women, but don't ever feel like you can't speak your truth as you see it. Hey, Purcell Freak 1 and Ryan and Cena. Hey. All right. So, yeah. And sorry, the one other thing was just like the only thing that really matters is what's important to you. Sometimes I think it can get really difficult to because there's so many things that aren't quite right, to put it mildly, that I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I feel so overwhelmed by that I end up in this kind of apathy. And even for a while, I was saying to people, I'm not reading the news, I'm not watching not watching television news anymore because it's such bad energy and da da da. And so I completely sort of checked out of like current affairs news, like any sort of global issues that were going on, and like because I didn't feel like I could contribute because there were so many things. And then I went to this Marianne Williamson talk, workshop actually last year, and she was saying I can't remember what subject she was talking about. It might have been like equal opportunities or something like that. And she was saying that it's a baton, that Martin Luther King wasn't setting out to end racism. He was part of a stream of energy that would keep moving forward, and so he passes the baton on to Al Sharpton, and Al Sharpton passes it on, and it gets passed on, and it gets passed on, and it gets passed on. So that gave me some relief in thinking, okay, so I can engage. It's not all on my shoulders, because I was thinking it's either on my shoulders and I've got to do it all, or I'll just check out and not do anything. So yeah, to just remember that it's a baton that you're passing on. You do your bit, we do our bit for climate change and, trying to avert this unnatural catastrophe that human beings seem to be about to cause. We pass that baton on to the next generation. You can see that young people are already like, they're not just like waiting for the baton, they're snatching it out of their hands. They're like, I'll take that, thank you very much. I will do something about the ice caps melting if you guys won't. So apathy is not really an option. And in fact, in a way, and I don't say this with a judgment, but apathy is actually a privilege, right? Apathy is a privilege, because, imagine you live in Venezuela. It's not really an option to check out and not involve yourself. Well, it probably is, but yeah. We in the West have got it very good, actually, in a way, because life is these many Western countries are incredibly stable because their political systems and social systems are very old, and so over time they've basically stabilized, and a lot of other countries don't have that luxury. So for us to, when people talk about Brexit fatigue or something like that, I'm like, well, lucky you. Because, if we're going to create this, then we don't really have the right to be bored of it. We're disrupting a very sort of interwoven system, by voting out of the EU. And so, if we want to participate in that process, we don't get to choose to be bored of it. It's like you don't have a baby and then just go, oh gosh, the baby's still here. I'm bored of it. You have to stick with your creations. Let's put it like that. And so apathy is not really an option. I say that with no judgment, because I just told you how apathetic I had gotten over politics as well. So I get how it can happen, but it's just a reminder that it's not really Martin Luther King and this woman actually, Carly, it was Simon that posted something about Sophie Sophie Scholl, is it? She was like an activist during the Second World War, and she was hanged by the Nazis for distributing anti-Nazi sort of literature. And she said that, and so did Martin Luther King, and many activists as well have spoken on the fact that apathy is the worst, one of the worst enemies. Actually, it's not actually your enemy that you think it is. Sometimes apathy is the thing that can be the most debilitating, because people don't give a shit are the ones that actually can be the most problematic. You know, people who just opt out of this, it just has nothing to do with me, governor. They're often the one, they can be the ones that are the biggest problem, not actually the sort of aggressors. Anyways. Okay. So, yeah, there's that. Oh yeah. Hang on, let me just say hello to a couple of folks who've joined. Sean, hi. Eduardo, hi. My Kent Life, yo. Sylvia, or is it Camille? Camille Sylvia. Anyways, hello. And Carly says yes, it's the biggest poison. Yeah. And I have to remind myself of that, to stay engaged and stay stay engaged basically. But the important thing to remember is, and this is where this is why I introduced the idea of that layer of that thinking called love, because that's quite a good place to come at the whole political system from. Because I'm not talking about love as in Valentine's love, heart love, I love my family, that type of thing. More a big open-hearted appreciation. Marianne Williamson, who's running for the Democratic nomination for the presidential elections in 2020, she speaks from this place very much in terms of politics. You know, she's not about sort of denigrating the enemy, she's not about attacking anybody, she's about saying that we need a new type of compassionate politics, a new way of being, and in politics, in our political lives. And I think she's capturing kind of that spirit of like coming from a place of love. Now, coming from a place of love doesn't mean that you can't be strong, you can't be brutal when necessary, you can't be honest, you can't be, you can't criticize or something like that. It just means that it's coming from a deeper place and some sort of egoic kind of orientation. So George says, love is a motivating force, I think you're right. And Carly says, she put it beautifully, wanting the quiet life. That's it. Yes, you're right. That's it. I only read it like very briefly once, but it just like it totally made sense. But yeah, basically wanting the quiet life, wanting to sort of opt out is more of a poison, as Carly put it, than sometimes a sort of an aggressive enemy. So one of the places that love will give you, one of the things that love will give you is the ability to see how complicated politics is. Because I think what people want is they want bite size and they want simple. And so they want in is good, out is bad, or, whatever, orientation of a version of that is true for you. When actually, using Brexit as an example, we're seeing over the course of these negotiations. Now, it's very easy to call it a shit show. Theresa May doesn't know what she's doing. The government don't know what they're doing. It's very easy to say all those things. But I bet if you took 650 or however many MPs there are, random people, they would do no better a job than those people there. And also, every now and again, like you ask people, okay, what's the solution? And everyone's got a different answer. So if we've all got a different answer, why are we expecting those guys to all have the correct answer? They're just people like us. I'm not talking about Brexit here. Don't get caught up with what I'm saying. I know it's hard because it's an emotive subject, but my point is politics is incredibly complicated. And so when you come at it from a perspective of love, then you can see how complex it is, and just give a little room for that. And, it takes out the necessity for sort of accusations and stuff like that. The other thing, actually, one other thing that I meant to mention as well is that, just to go back to this idea of this socio-political domain where, this type of thinking, which is where, politics and all that presides. And that's probably where you will have a lot of your political conversations from that domain. Just to be mindful that you don't get caught up in to be aware that is also the domain of blame, of complaint, of righteousness, and to just be mindful to not get caught up in that, because it's very easy to get tied up in that, and you think you're having a useful political discourse, but really all you're doing is trying to blame or trying to complain, or you're not. Is this conversation progressing? Is what I'm saying helping? Like, one of the things I think I would like to see is the left stop name calling. Because when the right does it, we're just like, oh, they are, a basket of deplorables, or, blah, 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 whatever. All right. But when the left does it, it somehow seems justified. Like the other day I was watching some awards ceremony, and and Christian Bale said that he used Satan as his inspiration for playing Dick Cheney. And I thought, that's not appropriate. That's actually not cool, because Dick Cheney, regardless of what he's done, he's still a human being, and it seems incredibly ungracious to accept an award and then say that about somebody. I don't know. So that's one of the things that I would like to see in politics is just moving on from this name calling, and just because somebody else is doing it, it doesn't make it right. And I know it's such an old thing that parents say to us, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but it's true. Just because they're doing it, it doesn't mean that we all now have to indulge in that. Michelle Obama said it best: when they go low, So that's also a place to come at your politics from, is to not get caught up in that. In that domain, just to be able to hear yourself in your speaking, and be able to own everything that you're saying, and know that you've come from a place of compassion. At least doesn't mean you have to agree with somebody, but at least look. I thought the other day that one of the best ways to get to know, because I would be pro remaining in the EU, but I thought one of the best ways to get to know Brexit voters is to have conversations with the people that drive actors to set, because a lot of those guys vote Remain, and we voted Leave, and I personally wouldn't have necessarily known that until I got into conversation with them, already built up a rapport, already liking these people a lot, and then realizing that, oh, that's what a Leave voter is really. Just this honest, hard-working person who, maybe feels now they were misled. Maybe they don't actually. Maybe they stand by their choices. But my point is that getting to know them, what are on the other side, is better than just preaching into the echo chamber and preaching to the choir, right? All right, so there's been a few thoughts there. So let's see what you guys have written. So Donald says, you have to differentiate between apathy and disillusionment, though. I've been overtly political since I was a teenager. Been in 3 political parties, all left-wing and all LRD. I don't know what that means. Yeah, I mean, well, maybe you tell me how you see the distinction between apathy and delusionment, because apathy might be, you might relate to apathy in terms of it's the result, and delusionment is the cause. Because delusionment. Did I just make up a word? Disillusionment might be the cause. So yeah, I don't know whether it's easy to pull apart like that. Steve has joined. Hey, Steve. And Donald says, I have just been burned out by the system and political infighting on the left. Yeah, can be exhausting. I would say that one's relationship with politics has got to be like everything we talk about on this thing. It's got to be built on a daily basis. And because then it's alive. Otherwise, if it becomes some ideology, then it kind of is a myth. It's kind of mythical thinking. It's that thing that I said, about people drinking a Kool-Aid, taking pledges, making commitments, not based on their own sort of research and, rigorous inquiry, but based on this is the party line. This is what we do in this faith, almost. But it's a political party, as it were. And there would be a lot more aliveness in politics if people, maybe if every year you had to sort of decide what party you're going to be in. Do you know what I mean? And whether you want a new one, whether you actually, you know what, this year I think I'll be in the independent group. Thank you very much. Not that that's a political party, but you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's perfectly valid that sometimes you just like, that's it, I'm out. But it is what it is, you know. I can't tell you whether to rejoin the party, or whether you actually just genuinely need a break from it, or whether you just need to change your way of seeing it and relating to it. That is a personal inquiry that I'm sure you will figure out. Donna says, it is why I focus more on my creative pursuits more. You know, I mean, that could be one justification that people use for their apathy. I'm not having a go. I'm just saying that there's a myriad, like I was discussing this earlier with my mum, who, you know, in her church, they're trying to encourage more people to get involved in actually helping with the running of the church. And I was saying, like, you know, you really got the ministers really got to just haul ass and just like call people on this shit, because people don't step forward. They sort of come to the church and there's beautiful flowers everywhere and the place is clean and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just saying that stuff doesn't happen by magic. Like, why aren't people stepping up? And then immediately, coming from compassion, I could see that actually there's a lot of things going on in people's lives, and some people's reasonings are justified and some are excuses. And it's not for me to say, 4 kids, I think you could just manage a bit of cleaning. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's on someone's own heart as to know whether they can step up or not, or whether they can. So it's like same as with the political sort of involvement. It's on someone's own heart that they've got to figure out. Who do I want to be in the matter of this political issue or situation? Hey Andy, hey Tanya, welcome. Haven't seen you for a minute. Tom says, agree with the name calling and the I'm right, you're wrong crap. Yeah, it's gotta go, because it's not going to get us anywhere. My Kent Life says, I've never really been political, but nowadays just can't avoid it. To have an informed opinion on it, you've got to become involved on some level. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe you see what. Maybe the way to be with it is to not have a fix, because it feels like a lot of people want to move towards, okay, that's the answer. Okay, Brexit, good, you know, leave, you know, Brexit, good, stay bad, remain bad, you know. But it might not be as simple as that. It might be that we just have to be in this constant state of evaluating the situation as members of this society. You know, maybe there isn't one finite answer, one definite absolute answer. Maybe it's a moving answer. Maybe a year ago it was a good idea, maybe now it isn't. So perhaps My Kent Life, sorry, don't know your real name, it is just a new constant, our political engagement and our sort of what we believe is just going to be a constantly evolving thing. Erin, hey, Steve says 1 finger pointing, 3 pointing back. What does that mean? What does that mean? Everybody has a story they live by, which defines their world. Key is understanding each other's stories. Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it isn't possible to do that because you can't know everyone's stories unless, well, I mean, maybe you could. You've got a bit of time on your hands, but like getting that there is a story, that there is a place that they're looking from. There was one time when I got into some sort of weird Twitter nonsense with somebody about it sort of circulated around the fact that the mayor had told everyone to remain calm after there was a bombing, and you know, it just got a bit messy, really. And one woman was having a go at me, calling me ignorant because I said I was agreeing with J.K. Rowling, who was calling Trump a blowhard. I wasn't agreeing with that bit. Just mind your business. You know, you're not helping, sort of thing. That was her sentiment, I think. And this woman was really angry with me, like, you know, I hope you get bombed or something, and then you'll see. There's quite a bit of that actually going on, but she was one of the more sort of more graphic, let's say, in her response. And I thought, you know what? I was a bit hungover. Thought, kill it with kindness. So I was like, well, babe, what's up? What's going on? You know, I had one of these sort of uncharacteristically sort of like compassionate moments. I was just like, what's up? And it turns out like her sister or a close family relative lived in London, and she was just deeply, deeply worried about them because, you know, the because she was in America and this person was here, and the narrative that I think a lot of sort of more sensationalist news outlets want to have us believe is that there's sort of Muslim Islamic extremists like running around literally with rocket launchers on their shoulders and no one's leaving their house. That's the kind of image that people like Katie What's-a-Chops is sort of propagating. And so, you know, of course people who reference off those things are gonna be scared. So I was just like, oh babe, don't worry about it, they're gonna be fine, it's not that dangerous here. And we just had a chat and stuff. And so my point is that it's very easy to come at it from a you're wrong, name calling-y type of thing. But when you take a minute to get to know people, most people want is for things to be better. It's just that we haven't all agreed on what better it looks like and how to get there. And that's where the disagreement comes in. Steve says, everybody, all right, okay, read that. Aaron gives a thumbs up. Patrick, hey, what's up? My Kent Life says, if the politicians are delusioned within their own parties, where does it leave the voters? Well, you see, if you look at it like that, then you will start to get into a victim mentality of, well, if they're not, what about us? We have to empower ourselves. If that means stepping up, if that means joining your local political party, if that means, you know, forming groups or whatever, if that means just having conversations online and just seeing where the positive is, because they always say where things have gone wrong, look for the people helping. There's always people helping. So they may well be disillusioned. You don't know. And it wouldn't be helpful to project that onto them. What would be more helpful is to just remain engaged and remain sort of curious and wanting to know, well, how can I contribute, or how can I progress a conversation. You know, Amber says, I tend to find myself fatigued, having to take some time before jumping back in. Also tired of the left putting on a show for the vote. Yeah. And Amber says, trying to be hip to get the young and or minority vote. Yeah, that is a problem. Look, it is fatiguing. There's no doubt about it. But like I said, it's a privilege to be fatigued or tired or apathetic about politics, because that's the world we live in. Luckily, we are not in feudal systems that decide everything through war, you know, tribal wars. We are in a political system. That's how our society functions now. So it's what it is. It is what it is. Donald says, I think apathy is different though. Apathy is not caring or disengaged. You can be disillusioned and still be engaged. It's extremely different in my view. Cool. Happy with that. I'm not here to tell anybody what one definition is or another. If that's yours, that's fine by me. Steve says, finger pointing. Oh yeah, okay. Take the plank out of your own eyes before you try to take the speck out of another's. It's so true. And it's so unfortunate that we're unable to do that. And I can see, you know, many times I've heard myself criticizing somebody or something, and then inside of me is going, you do that. And it happens more and more and more. And it feels like, when am I going to get the message to stop criticizing? Because you do that. So there's no point in because even today, when I was having this conversation about my mum's church and people stepping up and blah, 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 just this week, I've been asked to, you know, help with something, and I've been like, I'm too busy, I've got to, and I actually could find time, but I'm choosing not to, and I've got reasons and reasons and reasons. Same as the people that aren't involving themselves in the church, I've got reasons and reasons and reasons. And the same as people that aren't engaging politically, I've got reasons and reasons and reasons. So I guess we all have to reconcile within ourselves, where are we going to put our time and energy, and who do we want to be in the matter of that thing? Donald says, you need some right or wrong in politics, though. Take the Nazis, for example. Turning a blind eye to them wasn't really an option. I don't get how those two are linked. The 2 points that you make there, I don't get how they're linked. Sean, sorry, let me just understand. You need some right or wrong. I'm not saying that there isn't right and wrong, but if you come from a place of love, then you can handle it compassionately rather than you know, from coming from a place of blame and complaint. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, I would never say turn a blind eye to Nazism. So Sean says, people can have their opinions, but it doesn't make them right. Learn to not be offended. Well, easier said than done, Sean, as well, you know. And blame, Sean says, Lucy, hey. And Steve says, this is an unusual live chat. I guess I missed the meat, which led to us gnawing this political bone. Well, the conversation is about politics, basically, and how that relates to being a creative. So it's It sprung up what it sprung up. A couple of people have joined. Jonas Hagland and Ellie, MD, I'm guessing that is. Erin says, love your honesty and openness. Oh, thanks. All right, so listen, let's move on to the next bit because I am not going to get to my question. So the other one, so being a creative person who has an opinion about politics is one way to express your politics, but the other way, and the more obvious way, is through your art. But I will say this up top, it's not a requirement. I think sometimes people get it into their head that that's what they have to do with what they do. For example, in comedy, you know, I hear sometimes people talking about what comedians should and shouldn't be doing in terms of, you know, what they talk about, that we should be agitators or something like that. Absolutely not. It is not a requirement of any creative person to you know, include politics in what they do or what they don't. But if you do, then fantastic. Because it's another cut at the same issue. It's another way of staying engaged in a way that might work more for that person than being constantly caught up in political discourse with somebody. Sometimes, and sometimes also on the note of like using your art for political sort of messaging, is that sometimes people just need a break. You know, sometimes people want your creative endeavor as a break from all of that. So, for example, again, using comedy as an example, sometimes people don't want to hear about Brexit or Trump or whatever it is, you know, in a political, in a comedy club. Maybe they want to hear about the weird drawer that you have in your kitchen that's got all the things that, you know what I mean? Like, so there's as much validity in not including politics or in actively choosing not to include politics in your work as there is in including politics in your work. And you don't have to force it either. Sometimes it can happen naturally. So, you know, the art that we create is an indicator of our time. What we choose to include, what we choose to omit is a sort of a type of politics in its own way. And, you know, for example, where in American cinema, when it went through that sort of Technicolor, utopian, you know, musicals and all that, that was as a response to sort of depression and the world wars and stuff like that. So that's a subtle form of politics in a way as well. Anyways, it can be really subtle. Like, for, you know, take Black Panther, for example, it was political with a small p because of it was an entirely black cast, and there's this background narrative that black films don't travel, that people won't watch them, blah 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 blah. And then there was a little bit of racial politics in there as well, but it was quite specific. You know, it was between African Americans and Africa, you know, with the Killmonger character. And so there's subtle ways of doing it. It can be metaphorical, you know, for example, with Animal Farm, where he's never George Orwell is never explicit about you know, the politics behind it, to the point where I remember my dad saying that Animal Farm was about Nigeria. He said it was about Nigerian politics. Even to this day I'm like, what? So there's ways and ways. Just a few comments. Let me just get back. Donald says, no, someone was talking about the I'm right, you're wrong mentality as if it was a problem. It wasn't anything you said. Okay, I don't know that. I think what they're saying is the more coming from a place of blamey, rather than that we're all right or something like that. I think that that's what they were getting at, but I can't remember the comments. So, but yeah, nothing I can say about that because I got to move on. Okay. But I get you, Donald. I get what you're saying. Okay, Carly says, I think it's a brave conversation to have because people are so identified with the subject. I salute you. Great chat. Oh, cheers, Carly. Thank you. And Erin's like, whoop, whoop. Sean says, I think next week we should talk about the size reduction of cream eggs. Okay, right on. I'll think about it. I had some other ideas, but Sean, I'll think about it. Okay, so the key, I think, with this, just checking the time, the key with this is to carry it lightly. And so, so it doesn't don't turn it into a burden. It's a responsibility. And responsibility, I believe, is a choice. I don't think responsibility can be forced on someone because otherwise then it's a burden. Responsibility is something you take on. You choose to take on. So if you want to make politics part of your artistry sometimes, all the time, a bit, then that's your choice. But wear it lightly. Say, for example, with The Thick of It. That's making a political statement, mainly about how ridiculous politics is. But it's not. It wears it lightly because it's comedy, and it's not worthy. Because what can happen is if it becomes a burden, then it can also become very worthy, self-righteous, or smug, or those types of things. So the more lightly you can wear it, and the more you can have it like a responsibility rather than this burden, then people won't feel like browbeaten by it, right? So so the other thing is that there's no rules as to what your job is as an artist in terms of your creativity. There's no, even though some people always like to dictate what you should or shouldn't be doing with your work, it's absolutely down to you. And laughter, as I think my Kent Life is saying, comedy and music, etc., is people's only way of finding out what's happening in the political field, which might then lead on to them looking further into the subject. It's not the only way, but I mean, I see some people's, well, you did say some people, didn't you? It's some people's only way. Yeah, and comedy, I was going to say, and humour is a really great way of getting a message across. And someone I work with who runs, Keith Palmer, who runs a comedy school, said it really succinctly the other day. He said that if people are laughing, that means they're engaged. And then that means your message can get across. So sometimes, very under the radar, you can get some really interesting political ideas across that would be unpalatable, actually, otherwise. Dave Chappelle did it in, was it called Don't Shoot the Messenger? No, that was a Chris Rock special. Anyways, Dave Chappelle's done it in his comedy, Chris Rock, Bill Hicks. The list is endless of people that have managed to use comedy as a way of communicating very uncomfortable ideas and making us think, actually, and creating discussion off the back of it. So maybe it's not even just about the idea, maybe it's just to agitate and to create new discussions and have us have the revelations. What does it start? Passing on the baton, Hey Nick and Nicholas, and Steve says, do you think carrying politics lightly is a place of privilege? It reminds me of something MLK said about people telling blacks in America to be patient for political change. Carrying it lightly and being patient don't necessarily have to go hand in hand. You can still have urgency and wear that lightly. Look, it's not easy, but you can still push and carry it lightly. Sean says Bill Hicks was a legend. Tommy says currently there's a political and creative scandal. Jussie Smollett. It's coming out that he's yes that he stages the whole thing. Thoughts? Okay, so I'm not going to get into that, Tom, because that is a political discussion, really, and this is more about that place where creativity and politics intersects, rather than having a political discussion. So I'm going to leave that there, but guys, that's the end of this conversation, but I wanted to, because we've got 6 minutes. So I wanted to, how is everybody, by the way? Was that okay? Because I know that it's a difficult subject, and I deliberately didn't want to get into discussing anything specifically because it's emotive. For example, the Jussie Smollett thing it's a thing. But yes, I hope that that's helpful in some way in just reorientating or, creating a useful way of coming at politics and your creativity, having it be able to go hand in hand and have it be something that can be constantly evolving. Like this apathy aspect of this conversation for me is something like, whoa, I've really got to... That's something that has to be renewed anew every day, because you can get resting on your laurels about how much you're doing, and it's not to start giving yourself a hard time and say, right, you've got to do more, you're not doing enough, but just to know that you're engaging in a way that you can really own and really speaks of who you really are. That's my journey, I think. Okay, so I will come to your comments just now, but I want to let you know, question this week about projects. What what excites you about your project? We haven't talked about the project for a really long time, and I know people are like just cracking on with them, but I just want to hear some responses. What excites you about your project? So for those of you who don't know, basically everyone started a 3-month project about 2 months ago. I think we've only got a month left to go now, and they took either part of part of a whole that they wanted to achieve, or maybe it was a thing. Maybe they took on meditation, taking on a regular practice. And I just want to hear back from people to hear what excites them about their project. The other thing is to say, I will say this now before I get the countdown, is that we have, I think, 6 more of these left. I think this is number 44. So we've got 6 more of these left. I might have to cancel a couple in March because I'm going to be in LA and my mum's coming to visit. So we're going to do some things on Sunday, I think, which means that these won't be possible. But I'll just shift them back a couple of weeks and we'll just pick them up then. But I think we've only got about 6 more to go. But I'll update you on that nearer the time. George says, really interesting conversation. Thanks, George. Mike Kent Love says, it's emotive. Steve says, I came in late and struggled to get up to speed. This topic makes me anxious, but I appreciate your middle way approach. I don't know what that means, middle way. What does that mean? Amber says, I got signed for my voiceover stuff, and I've been going on auditions. No actual gigs yet, but still big strides. So Amber, I believe your project was it to get an agent as well, and then to get 2 gigs? So, I mean, getting the agent, the rest is just gonna follow. Amazing. Congratulations. I'm really, really happy for you. This is great news. Anyone else? Anyone got anything to share about projects, or what is exciting about that? About their project? I am excited about my project because I went through a period of really hating the meditation once it got beyond about sort of 13 minutes, because I've been going up a minute every week, so I'm now at 17 minutes, and yeah, that middle ground I was starting to really not enjoy. So I'm excited because I'm starting to enjoy it and really just relax into it. Okay. No, just 2 voiceover gigs. Okay, cool. Not Steve, not sitting in the extremes. I mean, I didn't really discuss my politics. It's more about just a place to come at it from. That's what I was really talking about. Carly says, I'm meditating an hour a day, breathing, focusing on body parts, then breathe, then visualization. Next to no anxiety. So powerful. Following Dr. Joe's Dispenza. Anyway, technique. Okay, cool. And Tommy gives Amber a round of applause. Awesome, guys. Well, listen, I'm getting the countdown. It's happening. So I'm going to leave it there. This was a bit of a tricky one, actually, because it's quite a hard thing to talk. We're talking about the phenomenon of it rather than getting into specific topics. So it's kind of having to talk around a thing, which is kind of weird. But anyways, I think we did it. We did okay. Yeah, I can't remember what next week's topic is, but there will be one. There will be one next week, and I hope you have a fabulous week. And don't get run down about the political landscape. It is what it is, and I take this saying from the what's it called, the Marigold Hotel. This is the second best Marigold Hotel film, or whatever it's called. And Dev Patel's character says, "Everything will be all right in the end, and if it is not all right, it is not yet the end." All right, guys. Listen, I'm gonna leave it there because I'm literally got 8 seconds to go. But listen, have an amazing week and take care, and I will see you all very soon. Bye, lots of love. Bye, 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 bye.